Good evening and welcome to our regular council meeting this September 16th. Before I get into business, as you know, I like to do something. Last week I brought a few things, but I'd like to thank Deputy Mayor Lang for two volunteer things. If you looked at our fire hall eaves draft, it's on point, so I thank Deputy Mayor Lang there. And also there was a soccer game that benefited from his kindness of lending a lawnmower an hour before the game because the grass was long. So thank you, Deputy Mayor Lang, for your kindness. So moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that the September 16th, 2024 council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be opened at 7:01 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. If we could all rise for the singing of our national anthem. I'd like to thank whoever turned that speaker up before this meeting last week. I think I heard myself sing too much. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, moving to the approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we will be removing item 6B, the auditor presentation, from this evening's agenda.
All right, thank you. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Carried. Moving to the approval of the minutes, were there any errors or omissions caught or noticed? Nope. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as circulated. Previous meeting minutes, September 3rd, 2024. Special meeting minutes, August 15th, 2024. Special meeting minutes, August 8th, 2024. All those in favor? Carried. We will now move into presentations and delegations. 6A, Cornwall Golf and Country Club, water rebate request. Mr. Eamon, just before you get up, if you just press the gray button and the red light will come on, and please speak at the desk up front.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council and staff. Thank you very much for allowing us to come in and make this presentation this evening. I've prepared a little bit of a slideshow here just to keep me on track because I tend to waver from time to time. Just as an introduction, my name is Rick Eamon. I'm retired, former Vice President of the Thompson Rosemount Group, and did a lot of volunteer work in a number of different organizations, and currently sit as director on the board at Cornwall Electric as well as at the Cornwall Golf and Country Club. And my friend over here is Don Fairweather. I think many of you know him. He was former school teacher on the United Upper Canada School, superintendent for the Upper Canada School Board, and the director of the local campus at St. Lawrence College before retirement. Don also is a director on the board of the Cornwall Golf and Country Club. We're both former presidents, and this is why we're here, because I think this started under the year I was president and followed up through Don, and we just wanted to get follow through and see what happens. So the purpose of our presentation this evening is to request a rebate of the overpayments from January 2012 to March 2019, the date that the township officially changed the minimum number of connections at the Cornwall Golf and Country Club. A little bit of history. I won't take too long here because I think maybe we've had this presentation with respect to history before, but the club was first established in 1896 and has been located at its present location since 1926. It was originally incorporated as a not-for-profit corporation with share capital, meaning the money that was raised from the sale of shares was used to purchase the land, construct the golf course and the clubhouse, and purchase the necessary equipment. On February 14th, during the time that I was president, we changed the incorporation of the Cornwall Golf and Country Club to a not-for-profit corporation without share capital, and the members who were shareholders agreed to donate their shares to the Cornwall Golf and Country Club. Under the February 14th letters of patent, the object of the corporation was to establish and operate a golf club for the promotion, organization, management of the sport of golf in the municipality of the Township of South Glengarry, to provide and maintain the golf course, building, clubhouse, and all other necessary buildings and equipment in connection therewith, to permit the same to be used by the community and to promote a social and friendly atmosphere among all its users, and to hold and arrange tournaments and other competitions, and to offer a grant to contribute towards the provision of prizes, awards, and other forms of recognition. It's managed by a group of volunteers and funded through membership, donations, and business advertising. As a result of our change in incorporation, we're now eligible to apply for much needed financial assistance from senior levels of government, and we've had a number of projects in which we were successful in receiving funding from senior levels of government. The Township of South Glengarry was one of those municipalities that were providing some funding for towards our patio at the golf course. We have a very active senior membership. There are 308 members who are over the age of 50 and 199 members over the age of 65, of which Don and I are a couple of those old guys. We're also active in assisting local charitable organizations and hosting their fundraising tournaments. We're dedicated to developing the game of golf with young folks through our junior program. It's been a very successful program, and we host many junior golf competitions. The golf course is also used by a number of our local high schools for their golf education programs. Currently, we have 711 members, of which approximately half are residents of the Township of South Glengarry. And in 2023, there were over 40,000 rounds of golf played at our course. The course has gone a long way since I first met with the municipality. We've been extremely successful, and I hate to say this, but I have to thank COVID for the rebound of golf at our course, as well as through courses throughout Canada and the United States. The Cornwall Golf and Country Club is not only a significant recreational facility within the township, but has been the focal point for residential development. Currently, in excess of 100 homes built around the course. The development has generated significant property tax revenue for the township. We employ over 52 full-time and part-time staff with a payroll of over $1 million annually. The majority of our staff live in the township. The golf course has been developed and is operated by a group of community leaders at no cost to the taxpayers of the township. The development of community recreational facilities using this type of methodology represents significant savings to the taxpayers of the municipality, particularly when compared to the cost of constructing and operating municipally owned facilities, arenas, community halls, etc. The Cornwall Golf and Country Club brings many tourists in the area and helps support local businesses. So, getting down to our request, now that we have a little bit of the background. So in August 6, 2019, there was a staff report. The mayor was talking to me earlier before this meeting that he was, at that time, was the treasurer, and he was the point of contact that we had at that point in time. So in that report, the township staff had recommended that the 4 ICI properties in Glen Walter, including the Cornwall Golf and Country Club, be treated the same as the Lancaster ICI properties for determining water rates. In the same staff report, it was recommended to treat both the Lancaster and Glen Walter systems fairly in the application of minimums. It was therefore recommended to set the rates retroactively to the June 2016 review by the township. At this time, it was also staff's position that the water rates should not be set retroactively prior to June 2016 because prior to that date, the system had legacy differences deriving from Old Schallenberg and Old Lancaster. In a letter dated June 18, 2019, like I said this has been a long time coming. I think I was supposed to be here last year, in fact, but we made it this year. So anyway, we requested that council consider a request for retroactive water rates to January 2012. The reason we picked that date was that was the date in which the township applied the change in policy to the Flying J Service Center in Lancaster. Our position was that the decision shouldn't be based on legacy differences deriving from Old Lancaster or Old Charlottenburg. Amalgamation had occurred in 1998, well before the rate structure was set for the Flying J. Rather, it should be based on whether this methodology or rate structure employed by the municipality to recover the cost of operations at these water facilities should be based on the same principles. After all, the residents of Lancaster and Glenmulter are all residents of South Glengarry. A follow-up letter was sent to the township on August 15, 2023, with a request to meet with council to discuss our request. After some scheduling challenges, not on your behalf, but on our behalf, we are happy to be here this evening to make our request to council. So, this is the request. We're requesting that a rebate for the overcharge for water from January 2012 to March 2019, the date the township officially changed the minimum number of connections at the Cornwall Golf and Country Club. The following is a breakdown of these overcharges as calculated by the township's treasurer. And I've broken it down in two periods because one period in 2019, the staff was recommending to council that they were in favor of that, and the other period, and for the reasons they presented and the reasons that we're presenting, we feel that we should be considered from that date. So the period between January 2012 to June 2016, the overcharge was $8,112.42. And all these figures, by the way, were calculated by the treasurer at that time. And the second period was from June 2016 to March 2019, which was recommended by staff in the 2019 report. This overcharge was $5,573.63. So what's happened since that point in time is that the township did in fact change the minimums to effective March 2019, but we never, even though it was recommended to council at that point in time, we never received the rebate for 2016 to 2019, and have not had any communication as to whether council had made a different decision or not. So that's why Don and I are here this evening. So again, thank you very much for your consideration of our request, and we're pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, and I would like to just follow up too that we don't make decisions typically. A staff report will come back with some of the guidance from this evening from staff. So just set that expectation. Are there any questions from around the council table? I know I wrote some of this as a former employee, so I'm fairly involved with the math behind it. And if I may, I guess, take that mantle as at that time, you stated it very well. Like I felt I was comfortable as an administrator to 2016. Now I'm on this side, so it's to legislation to us to decide if we want to go further back. And I think you presented that part of the thing, the argument. So I think it was 5. Like we charged 5 minimums previously. Oh, 7. Okay, 7 minimums, and that was a difference. Like Blue Anchor would have been charged 5, and whereas Super Mario's now South Glengarry would have been charged 1, and that was the conversation, just to give an idea as to how we got here. Are there any questions, comments from around the table? Any? I don't know if so. Okay, we'll go Councillor Jaworski, then Deputy Mayor Lang.
Well, I guess it's a question to you, Mayor McDonald, since you might remember better when it last came to us, when it last came to council, was there a decision made?
I believe from the information in here, it was an info report shortly before I left the township. So, as treasurer, so I don't think we rounded back to getting an answer saying yes or no. I kind of think we received it. So at that time, I don't know if sometimes receiving is. Oh, Councillor Jaworski.
It was on our agenda back in September 2023.
Yes, I believe that was some scheduling conflicts. I think there were some vacations. So there was nothing that happened in 2023. It was taken off the agenda.
Oh,
Maybe I can provide a little bit of insight. My recollection was that when the staff report went to council in 2019, that afterwards I was informed that council was looking to hire a consultant to take a look at the water rates in both Lancaster and Glen Walter, and that they were going to wait until at such time as that report was completed before they made a decision. With respect to last year, 2023, I wasn't able to make the meeting, so that it was canceled because I had more of the background of what was going on, so that's why it's taken this long to get here.
And to follow up on that question and to finish that off, as you may remember, I think it was December meeting 2021. That was whenever we made our decision on the Lancaster and Glen Walter water rates. I think it was EVB Engineering did it, so that's what we were waiting for that, and then that was the last meeting that I was in that seat. So probably how it got missed over time. Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Yeah, thanks. Stephanie kind of asked what I was wondering. It's had we actually come, because I remember talking about it. I don't remember if we made a decision or what it was. So I guess I'd be in favor of staff coming back to us with some options, and we can actually make a decision this time.
And just to add to that, so the 2016 to 19 has administratively somewhat been promised. I don't believe you've had that money given to you. So at the very least, that would give that sum that you saw, that 5,000 something versus the 8,000 additional. So, all right. So would staff be okay returning with a staff report, kind of highlighting that? I'm sure you can get in touch with the golf. Sorry, I almost said Glengarry Golf and Country Club. Sorry, Cornwall Golf and Country Club. And then come back to at a future meeting, probably is there a reasonable amount of time, do you think, like a meeting or two? Okay, great. So we'll have a staff report come back, and then we'll get that answer to you. I recommend probably forwarding that your presentation to Kaylin, the treasurer, Ms. McDonald, and then or if Kelly has it, then, or sorry, Ms. Campo has it. We'll get it, and then we'll come back. So thank you very much for your presentation. Yeah, thank you. So our next presentation, as 6B was removed, 6C, Glen Walter Water Tower Financing and Cost Recovery, DFA Infrastructure. They're likely coming on remotely. I guess an attempt to fill some airtime. We had a wonderful Williamstown Harvest Fest supper yesterday, so I'd like to thank St. Mary Center for that, always well organized. I think it was a nice little snake line to go in and a warm day to stand, but better to have warm weather. And as Canadians, we do typically say it's too cold or too warm. Very rarely is it exactly how we want. We have a mural project coming up next week, I believe Thursday, or Thursday to Friday, it's Thursday to Saturday, and so look forward to that on some of our main buildings. There's a GFA meeting that we were recently made aware of, so if you're interested, Farmers Feed Cities, Thursday, September 19th. I don't know, is it open, Deputy Mayor Lang, is it open? Okay, it's open to whoever wants to go. Last year, I believe it was at Stonehouse Stonehouse Acres Winery. They held well, so this year it's at Alexandria Curling Club. Food Grains, yeah, I don't have my phone right in front of me. So this Wednesday, the Food Grains at Fournier Farm. Fournier. I believe that's Scott Fournier, who at one time with the Williamstown Black Sox won and said he has never won the Stanley Cup, but he imagines that it would be not as enjoyable as winning the baseball tournament. All right. Hazardous waste on Saturday, thank you. So, in Williamstown, that's true. That's something to point out. So if you're watching and listening to me ramble, it will be on Fairview Road. I believe you enter from Johnson side and come out on County Road 17, also known as John Street in that area. If anybody else has anything they want to say, I'd be glad to hear it. Public announcements. All right. Lots going on, yeah. In the next few days is the 50th anniversary of Williamstown Public School Child Care Center. I believe that's Wednesday at 4:30. Oh, tomorrow? Okay, Tuesday. I guess I would never be somebody who's going to be on radio and kill time. Oh, there's awards. Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, the next, really the, if you look at, follows up, yeah. And there is the awards banquet this Saturday too, so thank you, Councillor. And Rebels home opener in South Glengarry Brigade, or sorry, Glengarry Brigade, yes. Yes. Okay, yeah, so we will move, thank you for everybody for listening to me kind of ramble there. We will move to item 7B, action request, greater purchase and refurbishment. So moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-99 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry direct administration to purchase the 2017 John Deere 770G motor grader from Alvan Equipment Solutions in accordance with their quote of $254,000 plus HST, and furthermore, that administration be directed to refurbish the 2010 Caterpillar Grader Unit 1 for $41,000 plus HST. Ms. McDonald, Mr. Levac.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I am very excited to introduce Mr. Levac and his new position as Supervisor of Roads and Fleet for the Township of South Glengarry. It's his first day in that position, and here he is at a council meeting with us, so that's a big step. So thank you so much, James, for coming out. If
And
we have any questions.
If I may, we should give a round of applause because we have done that for a lot of you. So thank you very much, James, for taking the position.
Thank you. So Mr. Levac is here to help me answer any questions specific to graders, since it's really up his wheelhouse. The resolution is pretty straightforward. We're under budget. We're hoping to purchase the 97 or the John Deere that we've been using and refurbish our CAT, with one caveat that on the day that I wrote the staff report, our CAT's fuel injectors failed. And we're looking to put $20,000 more into the CAT. We can do that through a maintenance budget or through this capital budget. It's really, that one I'll leave to council if you wanted to do a friendly amendment to make that $61,000 on the CAT, or if we're going to carry it through ops. Did you want to add anything?
Nope, not right now.
All right, so if there are any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from council on this particular matter? No? Would we like to make a friendly amendment to allow 61,000? Okay. All right, it's great to see things come under budget, and thank you for thinking strategically with that, or innovatively, or resourcefully, depending on how you like it. So then I will read this again just because of the amendment. Or Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just thought of something that I had thought of when I was reading the report. How many hours are on our 2010? Is it 10? The one we have now?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's around 13,000.
Okay, I just was kind of wondering.
I haven't been in a while, but
Yeah.
it's around
Okay.
13,000 hours.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'll read the motion as amended. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-99 be received and that Council of the Township of South Glengarry direct administration to purchase the 2017 John Deere 770G motor grader from Alvan Equipment Solution in accordance with their quote for $254,000 plus HST. And furthermore, that administration be directed to refurbish the 2010 Caterpillar Grader Unit 1 for $61,000 plus HST. All those in favor? Carried. So we'll move back into delegations. We have, I believe it's Mr. Ali here. So 6C, Glenn Walter, Water Tower Finance and Cost Recovery, DFA Infrastructure International Incorporated. So this is Ms. McDonald and Mr. Zegging.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I just wanted to give our consultant, Derek, a quick introduction. So Derek Ali is the founder and current president of DFA Infrastructure International. He has 38 years of extensive experience in municipal services, particularly in the public works sector. Council may remember seeing or hearing Derek as part of the 2021 or 2020 to 2021 SDNG solid waste study that was undertaken by SDNG and with participation from all the lower tiers. And then Derek, I'm just going to flip it over to you, if that's all right, for your presentation. You can hear us okay?
Hello, Mr. Ali, can you hear us?
While we're waiting to set that up, he's presenting on the Glen Walter Water Tower financing options analysis. The treasurer, Ms. McDonald, and I, along with Mr. Sege, went out and requested proposals from qualified participants or proponents to take a look at the amount that we're expecting the water tower to cost and to kind of break down what the options might be for the municipality in terms of financing and how that could be recovered back through rates or other means. So Mr. Lee and his team have prepared a draft technical memorandum, which is being presented today. So so that's kind of the setup to this and why we're here. So it's related to the water tower in Glen Walter and just financial options for funding.
Mr. Ali, can you hear us? All right,
Mis-
perhaps.
Mr. Mayor, he sent an email saying, I am on and seeing Kelly as the only other attendee. So I'm not sure he's seeing our video stream.
So if I may, just to keep business moving and not have me talk about events kind of all helter-skelter, we will move, and when Mr. Ali is able, we'll bring him back on, because eventually he will all of a sudden start hearing us. So we will move to action request 7C, removal of fire department replacement options. And this is Mr. Robertson. So moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-100 be received, and that the council hereby provides delegated authority to the fire chief to enter into an agreement up to $35,000 for the purchase of a 4x4 pickup truck, with funds being allocated from the 2024 fire capital budget. Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. One of our fleet assets, a 2000 Ford ambulance that we have stationed in our North Lancaster station, was removed from service due to age and the financial implications of completing some necessary maintenance that was needed on that vehicle. So the platform in an ambulance at one time.
Actually, I have you on YouTube all the week as well. So can you hear me okay?
We can hear you presently. We have just moved into another report. We'll come back to you in a second, if that's all right.
No, I can't.
Yes, we can hear you. All right, if we could turn the sound down on that, well the incoming sound, so keep the outgoing sound so until you can hear us. We'll go back to Mr. Robertson.
Yes, thank you. So As mentioned, we've taken a unit out of service. The unit was not economically viable to repair at this point. The platform, we had two used ambulances that we were using as support vehicles, namely, they were called rescue vehicles. One that is positioned in the Martintown station is still on the road. The one that was in the North Lancaster station has been taken out of service. So the ambulance platform does not afford us the ability to conduct any off-road services, either transporting staff into an off-road or a field situation where we need to bring staff or supplies. For that reason, we're looking to change that platform away from an ambulance to a 4x4 pickup truck. In our evaluation of our needs and the usage of the vehicle, we think that a strong used vehicle would be most advantageous to us. The request of the report is basically what we're looking for. Because the used market is sort of a time-sensitive market, if something does pop up, we'd like to be able to move on it fairly rapidly. We very much want to look at a vehicle that is economically advantageous to us. So with that, we're looking to be authorized for the amount of $35,000 so that we can purchase a vehicle that does come up through our searches. So. And the price of $35,000, on one side, we think that's sort of the value we'd like to be looking at, but also that similar corresponds with the amount that is remaining in our capital project to refurbish the roof on the Williamstown Fire Hall. That project was tendered at, budgeted and tendered, sorry, it was budgeted at $175,000. The tender came back at 136. We've had one minor change order, just because, of course, it is a renovation to an existing building. So we're about $140,000. So roughly, there's $35,000 remaining in that fund. Our wish is we can reallocate that $35,000 to the purchase of a replacement vehicle. So if there are any questions, I'm open to answers.
All right. Are there any questions, comments from council? If I may pull a Deputy Mayor Lang, I'm curious for your experience on the fire services. The truck is an appropriate and will provide better service or more accurately provides the needs that we require?
I believe it will. And I think I don't think our chiefs made this decision in a vacuum. The chiefs meetings have discussed it numerous times. And I mean, in the wintertime, we have all kinds of long farm laneways. Those ambulances were notorious. Like, you couldn't go in this much snow. They would get stuck anywhere. Like, they're just, they were terrible to get around. They were able to haul a reasonable amount of stuff, but so was the pickup. The other thing, they had to be safetied annually. So that's a cost. Pickup trucks, I do not, I have to ask the chief, but I don't believe we'd have to safety them manually. They're a lot cheaper to maintain and easier to find. And I think it's a great idea.
Thank you for bringing that perspective. All right, with that being said, all those in favor of the motion as read, carried.
Mr. Ali, can you hear us now?
Not continue on.
Test.
Okay, we're just going to take a momentary pause because it's difficult to test the system while we're continuing our meeting. So for those out there, you're just going to see us smiling.
Test, test, test. Test, test. Test, test. Test, test. Test, test. Test, 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 test.
I'm not sure
No worries.
what's happening.
Okay, I'm going to give you a 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thanks for having me tonight. So what I'm going to do is just sort of touch on the main items that we've covered as part of the financing strategy for the tower. And if you can see my screen, I'm just going to go through just make sure I've got it, the slideshow going here. One second. Hang on. Okay. So what we're going to do is just sort of go back a little bit and just a little bit of background on the tower. And then we'll talk about how we came about with the financing options and particularly the cost recovery options. And of course, our recommendations. Just to recap, the tower, the capacity is designed for 30 years to accommodate about the existing customers, new growth, infill, and also fire protection. Now, as you can see on this slide, there's about 1,480 cubic meters required in storage, so rounded up to 1,500. It's really about 1,700, but you've got a bit of storage that's at the water treatment plant. So the net amount, the increase required is about 1,500. And of that, 15, about 58% is required for fire protection. So that is storage that's really not touched, but stays in storage until it's needed for firefighting purposes. And the remaining 42% for equalization is used for irregular demand and consumption, as the need goes up during the day and fluctuates. Now, one of the key things here is that the service life of the tower is expected to be 80 years, but that also requires maintenance every 20 years. So without the maintenance, the major maintenance, the life of the tower could be a lot shorter. In terms of the tower costs, which you probably already know, it's about $3 million that would need to be financed through debt. And what we've done here is there's also short-term financing for the construction. So we've assumed that the construction will be within a year, and the township would sort of beg, borrow, and steal for that year to pay for it. But at the end of the year, add that amount to the interest amount to the overall debt requirement at the end of the year. We've also looked at what would be required in 20 years. So it's about 2.9 or 3 million for major maintenance, and that's around $1.6 million indexed to 2045. So what are the cost recovery options? Sorry, let me just get down here to put on the background and just. There we go. So we've got the number of connections that would be facilitated by the tower. The maximum would be around 802, and these are what are referred to as equivalent residential connections. So they're not actual connections, but a little bit more. Some, I believe you've got a couple, maybe one or two customers that would be more than what a regular residential customer would require. So they're referred to as equivalent residential connections. So you've got 802, of which 60% are existing, and you've got the remaining 40% that would be added through infill and development. And one of the challenges here is you can see is that most of the development is going to come later on after 10 years or so. And that's mainly due to the capacity limitations of the water and sewer treatment plants. So that's important because what it means at the end, and you'll see, is that the cost of the debt or repayment of the debt cannot be shared with the development community in the early years. So within the next 10 years, because they won't be there to share in the repayment. So the reliance on the development to help pay for that tower over the next 10 years is not there. The approach taken, just going to run down here. The approach taken is to look at the options in terms of making sure that there's full cost recovery. So we want to recover the full cost of the debt repayment. Look at fairness and equity amongst the different customer classes, and even intergenerational equity, particularly in terms of repaying any debt beyond 20 years or for the maintenance of the tower after 20 years. Of course, there's always administration, so you want to be able to do that with some simplicity, I guess. Revenue security is quite important. We want to make sure that the revenue is recovered to pay the debt, and you'll see where in our report we've indicated that we did not recommend attaching the charges to the volumetric consumption as a result of that, because of the fluctuations in consumption and therefore fluctuations in revenue. Of course, affordability is a critical component, and you've got the impacts on your debt capacity as well. So from a financing point of view, we've looked at Infrastructure Ontario. Basically, the private markets would tend to be more expensive and a lot more involved if the township were to issue debentures. But Infrastructure Ontario offers sort of a more affordable, simpler approach to acquiring financing for these types of projects. And they offer up to 30 years of a debt, in terms of a debt term, or the life of the asset. And in this case, your asset life is 80 years, but they will only go up to 30. Because there's major maintenance in 20 years, then the 20-year term would probably be the one that's most realistic. This slide shows the different interest rates, and what I can say is that since we started the report, the interest rates have gone down, and with the expected decline, further declines from the Bank of Canada, these interest rates are expected to drop even more come the end of next year, or if and when this project proceeds and the debt is needed. So you can see here where, of course, the longer terms you pay more interest, and the shorter terms you pay less, but the annual amount, the annual repayment amount is a lot higher, and therefore has a greater impact on the customers for repayment, as well as the debt capacity. In terms of the cost recovery options, we've looked at the need for a fixed charge to guarantee revenue. So instead of a volumetric charge or blending it in with the cost per cubic meter, it would be a fixed charge to be added to each equivalent connection. There would be, to be able to repay the debt without running any deficits, the existing customers at the time the debt is issued would be charged with repayment of that debt. There's also firefighting storage, which is a major component of the tower. So if one were to look at the purpose of the tower, then there's an argument to be made that perhaps the firefighting component could be sharing in the cost of that tower. And of course, there's the need to fund the major maintenance, which again is quite significant, which would be required in 20 years. So what we've looked at are two options. And these slides are, I think they're a bit reversed. Option A would have two components. It's the annual charge to existing customers, and we've estimated the customers that would be existing at the time, the connections at the time the debt is issued would be around 478. And that is needed in order to guarantee recovery of the annual amount to repay the debt without running any deficits. The charge would end when the debt is repaid. The second part of this option is the connection fee, and the connection fee would be picked up by approximately 324 new connections. So basically what we've done is said at the beginning in 2025, the debt amount, 40% of that would be due to new connections. So we've taken that amount and indexed it annually to get the connection fee. And the interest rate that's used is equivalent to the interest rate of the debt and the term of that debt. And you will see later on where we've got different interest rates and therefore different connection fees depending on the term. The connection fees would not continue for the 20 years, but for the 30 years, which is the full study period of the water tower for the engineering design purposes. And it's also the period over which the new development is expected to connect and utilize the tower. That revenue that would be collected at that time could be used to reduce the debt once it starts coming in, reduce the annual charges to the existing customers, or be used to fund any the major maintenance that will be coming up in 20 years. So there's some flexibility in terms of how that money can be used at that time. But it all depends on the term of the debt that's selected. The second option is very similar to option one, except that we've now said, perhaps fire protection should pay a portion of that cost. And we've allocated, because of the design capacity, we've allocated 58% to the to fire protection. And of course, that would translate into property taxes at the end of the day. The remaining 42% would be split between the existing customers and new development. And the way those were calculated under option B is the same as under option B, the same concept, except the numbers are lower. So this slide shows a comparison of option A and B and each debt term. So each financing option and each cost recovery option. And you can see where the 20-year term seems to be sort of a sweet spot whereby the cost to the annual charge to the existing customer is not as high as with the lower term lower debt terms, but they're higher, a bit higher than the longer terms. And I think one of the things with to keep in mind is with the longer term, you'd have sort of a layering of the additional costs of that 20-year major maintenance. So if we were to go with a 25 or a 30-year term, you'd also have these costs plus any additional cost that's required to be recovered from funding the major maintenance of the tower. Under option B, the annual charges are a lot lower, but again, most of the cost, quite a bit of the cost would be annually would be picked up through the fire charge, fire protection charge, which would be recovered through the property taxes. Now, this option B assumes that everyone would benefit from having fire storage, including properties that are not connected, meaning that those properties with private services, if there is a fire, then the fire department would be able to respond to those situations and utilize the storage that's within the tower for those purposes. So, I mean, that's an assumption that's that should be confirmed based on the operations and how the fire department operates to see whether there's some fairness in that approach. So at the end of the day, in our analysis, we would suggest that if you were to proceed with the tower and the debt financing, that the 20-year term would probably be the term to look at or to consider. It has a lower annual charge. It sort of coincides with the timing of the major maintenance. So by the time that major maintenance cost comes up, you will have already repaid the debt. It's also a good opportunity because it's a longer term. By that time, there would be more development coming in and therefore more connections, therefore more connection fee revenues that could be used with a bit of flexibility to, as indicated, reduce the balance of the debt or annual charges or go towards the major maintenance. It also has a very low debt capacity impact of 2%. Currently, I think it's about 3 million or so in terms of the annual repayment limit. Both options A and B would recover 100% of the debt repayment. Both would provide secure revenue, relatively easy to administer. Option B has a lower annual charge, but of course there's the amount that's allocated to the tax base. So what we would recommend if you were to proceed is to look at option B. And if that's based on the operations, it's not deemed to be fair, then of course it would be option A. And I believe we had a couple of questions that came in. I'm just going to switch to those. So the connection fee, the question is how was the connection fee determined? And basically, we took the amount of the debt, and then under option A, 40% of that cost would be allocated to new development or new connections. So that amount was divided, the 40% was divided by the number of new connections, and the amount increased annually by the interest rate on the debt. And what it means is that if a new connection joined in 2025, came in 2025, they'd be treated as an existing connection and therefore pay the annual charge. But once the debt is issued, any connections after that would pay the connection fee equivalent to the original amount plus the interest of their share. And similarly, under option B, it's the same thing, except same concept, same methodology, but different numbers, lower numbers. In terms of there's a question on the flexibility in terms of the percentage allocated to fire. And that's something that, I mean, it's from a technical standpoint, the tower, the size of the tower and capacity is based on the needs for fire protection, and it turns out to be 58%. In terms of the cost recovery, it could, and fairness, it could be that, but it's really council's discretion on that percentage. It could be a lower number if that's the will of council. But 58% is the design. When one considers the design capacity, 58% is quite defensible from that perspective. So with that, that would be the end of my presentation. And I think if there are any questions afterwards, I'd certainly follow up later on and answer those. And I'd like to thank, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank you and members of council for having me tonight to do this presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll have Ms. McDonald and Mr. Sege come up because we'll go right into action request 7A, Glen Walter Water Tower projects. And for those of you online, I do hope that you could hear that presentation. If not, it was on page 22 to 36 of the agenda, and the presentation was mostly what was kind of explained through. If you read it, it's very similar to the presentation that was given to us. 7A, Glen Walter Water Tower Project, moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-98 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry direct administration to, and we'll have three options, so I'll read it again once we decide. Proceed with option A, which is tendering the two new tender packages, being the Glen Walter Water Tower tender package and the associated water main rehabilitation tender package. Option B would be to return to council with a rescoped project for the Glen Walter Water Tower and water main project that fits within the original funding agreement. And option C, shelf the Glen Walter Water Tower project and notify the appropriate funding agencies. Just before, and I know this is not maybe a standard housekeeping item, it is quite warm, and I know we have a fairly decent dress code, so if any member of council wants to take off their coat or overcoat, because we can't make our best decisions when we're warm, like we will just loosen that expectation, because I've rolled up my pants already underneath here, and I'm still sweating. Public doesn't need to know that, but I do want us to be comfortable, so if you need to be less formal, please do so for your comfort. Ms. McDonald and Mr. Sege.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council, for rolling with our technology issues for our presentation. One of the questions that was asked of me was why are we bringing this forward? And it's really whenever Council approved this project is on the basis of 66% funding provided to us, and then we would kick in 33% from the Glen Walter water system. And administratively, as the costs of this project have ballooned, we felt more and more uncomfortable with proceeding without coming back for a conversation with council to see if this is still the direction that you'd like to pursue or if you'd like to look at other options. So the report that DFA that Derek Mr. Ali presented was only considering the cost of the water tower proper. So that is the $6.7 million. The water main project was also bundled in with this. The water main project includes, and we scoped this down from the original vision of 4,000 meters of water mains being repaired. So we scoped it down to only the mains that were undersized to support the water tower. It would include 2 new high lifts in that water main package, and these high lifts, Mr. Sege in a bit hopefully will support why they're needed regardless of the direction that we go in. And we are anticipating that could be an additional $1 million to $1.5 million on top of the 6.7. And we received notice that we might need to bring in additional fill. So even that 6.7 million, just because the soils are bad, that 6.7 million may be undervalued by 100 to 200,000. So when council's looking at these numbers, like that's what I would consider the minimum of what may be charged against the Glen Walter system in some way, shape, or form. And so we thought it was really important to come back and say, hey, this is what we thought it was going to be in 2021. It's 2024. Prices have changed. Prices have gone up. Does council still, with this technical memorandum, wish for us to tender out the package? We're tender ready, so we could go and we could find out what the price is. Or if members of council and council as a whole are feeling as uncomfortable as we are, then we could rescope it. You could ask us to come back and rescope, and we could look at the mains, the high lifts, which will be needed regardless, and maybe some site prep works, keeping within that original 66-33%. And in looking at our funding agreement, it looks like we can rescope our project as long as it is generally maintaining some of the key aspects of our original funding request, and these are all in there. Something else that made us feel a little bit kind of, and again, I'm using the word uncomfortable because this is, we are trying to make council's will come to fruition, let's say. And whenever it starts to feel like maybe WID's going a little off ways, it's just uncomfortable for an administrator. So when we look at the need for the water tower, there likely will be a need, and it will definitely benefit the system, but with so much uncertainty in the growth in Glen Walter. So right now we don't have growth. So there is no growth component to fund this water tower moving forward. If we were certain that we could connect to Cornwall, and we are so excited to enter into the memorandum of understanding with them, and if that comes out and suddenly we have growth capacity, then a water tower is a good idea. Or if that doesn't work and we proceed with our EA to twin the plants and gain capacity that way, then yes, a water tower is a good idea, but we don't want to put the system in a position that the existing users are funding this now 66% of a water tower that maybe they weren't expecting. So we have brought this to council to find out, would you like us to tender our packages and see what the prices come in? Would you prefer us to go back to the table, rescope it, and come back with a few options that we could reasonably pull off within our funding timelines? Would you like to shelve the project completely? And by shelve it, I mean put it on that shelf until there's an opportunity to receive more funding to do this project, either bundled with tying into the city of Cornwall or our own expansion. So as I was describing to some of our staff today, like mega millions, like colloquially, oh wow, I can't say that word. Mega millions are required to expand the plans, and many mega millions are required to tie into Cornwall. And adding on a water tower to a mega million or a mini mega million is like not so much extra. And it might be a little more palatable to have one, increase the water rates, and two. But that again would be to the will of council. And of course you can defer this and say, hey, we need more information to make any of these decisions. And we would be more than happy to go back and talk to Derek or other people and get more information for council. So we'll do our best to take a crack at answering any questions. And again, technical questions, Mr. Sega here. Kind of the more high-level questions, I'm able to take a kick at it, Ken, but thanks for allowing us to bring this forward.
I saw Councillor Bougie, then Councillor Actonel. I just, if I may, just jump the queue. You said we scoped back, so we had 4,000 meters or 4 kilometers previously and 2 high lifts, but then we pulled that back. How many meters of pipe would be in the current scope of work approximately?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it's around 1,000 meters currently. There's some give and take to those 1,000 meters as well, just due to depending on our location, depending on certain streets, we might have to uplarge the mains, depending on if we were to hook up to Cornwall in the future or if we stay in-house. But staying in-house also means that our water treatment facility might move, or our wastewater treatment facility might move from its current location. So some of those aspects are still undetermined. But yeah, I believe it was a reduction of about 3,000 meters.
Okay, and if I guess I can follow up. When we look at our water leakage loss, like it is considerable, and I think it's considerably above, like, say, the averages of other systems. Would having that 4,000 meters make, like, improve our pipe quality so we'd have less leakage in the event that we do hook up to Cornwall? Because as we know, we're very hopeful, and I guess Deputy Mayor Lang and I have a meeting, it's either tomorrow or the next day with the city to start those conversations. But if we're paying for, you know, like 1 liter here and we're only able to serve 0.5 liters, like we're paying for half of water that we're not using or cannot charge, would this, like, if this change scope to 4,000 meters instead of 1,000, would that assist with our leakage problem or situation?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it would definitely help. To what point, how much we would save is a question I'm unable to probably answer this evening.
Okay, Councillor Bougie, then Councillor McTinnell.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Thanks for, I guess, all the information. I mean, it's a lot to absorb, but I guess in reviewing this, a couple things were brought up. I mean, I guess there's no harm in tendering it to see kind of the amount. I mean, when I saw the $6.7 million, that definitely jumped off the page. I didn't think it was going to be to that extent. But I mean, I guess we'll know when for sure when the tendering goes out. And I think I'm leaning to that direction. The other question is, with the funding, is there a timeline, or is there a deadline, I should say, for this funding? Because we are getting significant funding as well. And I mean, we wouldn't want to waste that opportunity.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the funding expires in the end of 2026.
Councillor McTinnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just clarifying, I guess these are Class D estimates. They're not tendered. So we don't know until they're tendered. It could be $7 million or $7.5 million, or it could be 10. So really, it's we don't know until we get an actual quote, and we can always turn down a tender if it's not an exorbitant amount of work to tender it, or if your feelings are that we are actually going to come into this or lower. I'd maybe be a little more interested in tendering it just to get a real number, or a very much better idea of what it's going to cost us. Like we know, I think there's only 2 producers or I guess suppliers for water towers in the province, so if not further expanding than that, so let's keep that in mind. It could be worse, it could be better. And I think as well too, if we kind of look, if we're honest and we look at the kind of landscape of upper levels of government between the province and the feds, it's not unplausible to say there might be a change in Ottawa where there might be a little bit more focus on housing, and we could use that to our advantage in looking for money. I don't think we always see the province right now saying the feds are not supporting any water, wastewater infrastructure projects. It's not on their agenda, and it seems to be shelved until we get a change. So it's not implausible to say we have to go and get more, or we do other works with this. But I'd be interested to see what a tender says, but that's pending how much that's going to cost both of you in time, or if we're better to just go to the rescope. But
There was a touch on time that Councillor McTinnell, like, what would that, like, would it delay us further, I guess?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we have the full tender packages. Do we have the main one? No. So we have the full water tower package and are waiting on the main one. And like it's massive, but rescoping versus going out to tender is going to be pretty quick because we're near the end of the project. And a clarification, they are Class A estimates, so I think they're going to be fairly close, given the limited number of suppliers for water towers. I think on the main side, like our guts may be wrong there, but the water tower, we'll see.
Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Whatever happens, if we end up coming to a deal with Cornwall, which I'm very hopeful for, or if we end up having to do so, we have to do something eventually because growth is stopped there. The water tower would be a part of either package, I would assume. That's what I had heard. So the water tower is necessary. So I guess my vote is to go to tender for both, but have them, you know, so that the tender, I assume it's going to be different companies that do both. The water tower will be a separate company than the line. So we can make a decision when that happens, but I don't like the idea of wasting 3.6 million. I hate to go to the feds for more money, which we're going to need at some point, having to say that we turned down 3.6 because we didn't get around to doing it, or we thought it was, you know, not quite enough or something, you know. Even if it turns out to be, you know, half of the project, or even close to half, it's funding. So I think I want to see us use it. I'd like to see this move forward.
Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. So I'm uncomfortable is probably a good way to describe sort of my feelings about this. Yes, I see that eventually a water tower will be necessary, but in the scenario that we're in now, this large cost for this water tower, there's really no benefit for it for quite some time, unless we're out of this situation of uncertainty. If we could connect to Cornwall, then I think we would get benefit from it. Benefit in the sense of all the dollars that were spent on it, we would get new users faster, and then that would reduce, you know, the cost, because right now this is a huge cost to the current users and very few projected new connections for a long time. And in the scenario where we don't connect and we have to twin one of the plants, and it's, I don't know, is it $30 million or something like that? Again, I mean, that's a huge additional cost that, again, the timeline on that, who knows what that would be. So I certainly think we need to use the funding, but I'm very uncomfortable putting this huge cost on folks with not a clear plan on how there's going to be payback into the system. So I'm leaning towards, I mean, it'd be great to, I guess, I mean, I'm more interested in where the water main costs would be going. I think the water tower, if it's Class A, then we'll probably know what it is. But and honestly, it sounds like the water main work is of more immediate value to the point that the mayor raised. And also it's, you know, used in any, could be used, it's valuable in any scenario. Questions that I would have, one of them is, you know, would the water tower be would it necessarily be the same if we connected to Cornwall, or would it potentially be a different size or a different construction? And the other comment I would like to make is that I find that again, 40% of the debt is allocated to new connections. So, you know, we talk about growth pays for growth, like this, again, huge investment into the system, and 60% of it is being paid by existing folks. So again, that doesn't sit super well with me in terms of those folks paying for. So I would say in any scenario, the cost for the new connections needs to be higher than what's listed there. That would be my recommendation. But I'll let you answer my question, please.
So through you, Mr. Mayor. I was coming in going to answer that question, saying yes, 100%. The water tower is going to be the same no matter which scenario, and it truly will be the same. It'll be the 1,500 cubes. The only difference is right now, depending on. So the answer is yes to your question. So the part where there's a little bit of where I have to change my answer right now is right now the Glen Walter Water Treatment Plant has a reservoir underneath the building. It's about 268 cubes. So that was taken into the consideration for 1,700 cubes for firefighting flow for the entire village. But so if we were to potentially hook up to Cornwall, there's potential of us needing to either have a booster station between us and the city of Cornwall. There's potential for like a water meter to be installed so they can charge the water back to us. So I do believe there's another small aspect to that project that would also be included when we hook up to the city of Cornwall. The water tower would definitely be the 1,500 cubes, but there's also potential to leave the water treatment facility online and having an underground reservoir. But those are all little aspects that we look at as we go, as we dig deeper into the type of infrastructure we're going to have if we were to hook up to the city of Cornwall.
Councillor McAdell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just kind of interested, and I guess I'm not expecting an answer tonight, and it could be from either our treasurer or from yourself, Mr. Seguin. I just kind of, based on the numbers we're talking, just for the charge for local residents on either option A or B, specifically A, I guess, I based it on my bill I used to have when I had a home on water and sewer in the village of Lancaster. I know, different system, but still, it was roughly about an increase of 42% of the bill, I think. So if somebody could come back with a percentage, and that's just on the base, what roughly it would be an increase onto for option A and B for each of the options, as far as what it would cost the average person, or the base rate payer, and maybe the mid payer. So that was just one thing, and I seem to have forgotten to write down my second question. I'm sure it'll come to me as soon as you both take your seats over there. So thanks.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we definitely can do that. And just to confirm, we'll bring it back looking at option A at the 20 years as recommended this evening.
Because would I be correct to think that water rates are in and around $190 now every 2 months? So sub 1,200. Yes, it'd be somewhere near 40%, I think, increase to the bill. That's what we're looking at. And again, now you can break it down 84 every 2 months. Kind of like that's a way to look at it too, because it looks big sometimes when you look at it as a year, but when you break it down, I know we often say, like, how many Tim Hortons coffees do you have to sacrifice, or cases of beer. So with that, are we wanting more information? I think I heard perhaps Councillor Jaworski.
So question, regardless of the scope, we're on the hook, we would, a minimum of a third, correct? So if we did rescope, like, and we could, it could be back to that we could be back to 1/3 of the overall total. So I don't know how much, I mean, again, that's why I'm leaning again towards the rescoping to understand how we could, again, use the funding, but perhaps use it in a way that aligns better with the information that we have today. But I'm an optimistic person, and I like to think that we'll make great headway on the MOU with Cornwall and have an answer, on how that might go before this funding expires. And I think that would be sort of more of an ideal scenario to what's happening here.
Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. The trouble with that is we need more than an answer before it expires. We need to spend it before it expires. And it's likely going to take a year to put up a water tower, I would think. If they give you any... So my recommendation is that we go to tender. We're tender ready. And then we'll have numbers in front of us, and we can make a decision at that time.
Councillor McInell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I agreed wholeheartedly with the deputy mayor. I'm not comfortable with the cost at this point, but I mean, we won't know our actual cost until we get a tender. So, and frankly, we paid a consulting firm to do a tender for us. So, if it's this thick, I'm sure we paid quite a bit for it. So, send it out to tender, I think, at this point, and we make a decision with tendered pricing.
All right, I think Councillor Bougie kind of is nodding that way. So that will be the will of council. I just want one follow-up question, because it seems we're going option B, or sorry, option A, sorry. So I'd probably lean somewhat towards B. So if we get the tender back, option A, and council, we look at it, we kind of balk at it, we say, okay, that is not reasonable. How long would it take to look at a change of scope? Like, is that a reasonable thing that we could ask of administration and still meet those deadlines to get our funding? Or is it too much to do both?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that upgrading the high lifts would be fairly easy to flip around. The water mains should be already ready to go. It would just be if we wanted to include any site preparation works, pulling that out of the water tower tender and then throwing it into something else and retendering that part. I will note that if we go, or perhaps a question that I think if we'd had a discussion with technology, this would have fallen out, and I think I know the answer, but I would also be looking tonight to get a sense of when we return with these tenders, we will need to have a borrowing bylaw ready for you. So are we excluding the option of charging to fire services, like in terms of the,
Yes, in terms of like, okay, so that's not
it's not
particularly.
here, Mr. Mayor, but I think it would have come out of the discussion had Mr. Ali's presentation allowed for discussions, and we would have administratively had
An idea of where
guide.
to go.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we'll go to Deputy Mayor Lang, and I think I saw Councillor McDonnell after.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I don't have a problem with firefighting paying some, but nobody in Lancaster Heights is going to make use of this system. To me, it would be a benefit to any of the residents basically from Tyo Town to Ray Road in that block. I could see us possibly drawing from those hydrants if there was a fire that we needed water. But outside of that, I don't think it would benefit the rest. It's a shame to make them pay for something water related that doesn't benefit them. That's kind of my thought.
If I may, before moving to Councillor McDonnell, we do have streetlights as a local area improvement charge where, you know, the people in the village of Williamstown or your hamlets, wherever they are, pay for them. So we could possibly, would it be possible, just an administrative question, to like, you know, take a geo, like these people benefit and look at it and then say, those individuals, because I know whenever you're using your GIS, you can sometimes pull the addresses, so we'd have an idea of how many properties would like kind of go by Deputy Mayor Lang is kind of that Tyo Town. We kind of like look at this border and say, is this a reasonable benefiting area? And then the council can have the discussion whether we want it to be that or all of South Glengarry. Is that something that would be possible?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I got a sort of from our treasurer, so I think that we can take it back, put out the tender, and try and come back before the tender closes with a bit of a discussion on that. And then I don't know if it was highlighted, I didn't say it, but fire services only draws 40,000 liters for this area, and it would be $140,000 a year if we maintain the max 58% over 20 years. So that's quite a bit of money for 40,000 liters when we have 2 dry hydrants. So I think there'll be some discussions between fire and infrastructure to see what 40,000 liters worth of dollars might look like in our administrative perspective. So we'll take a crack at something.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDonnell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll agree with Deputy Mayor Lang as well. There's probably very little benefit, well, little to no benefit for somebody living in Lancaster Heights. I believe the reason, and maybe this can be confirmed by Ms. McDonald, the reason this is put in there is if we feel it is too much for the tax or the rate users of Glen Walter to pay, this is our one perceived out where the municipality can inject our own funds into it while still being above board in the water. I think the Water Act of Ontario or whatever that municipal or provincial policy is. So I think that's our one out to lower the cost of it to the ratepayers so they're not bearing a 50% increase on their water.
All right, and just because this has decent consequence, has everybody felt like their questions have been asked and also their questions have been heard fully? Okay, Councillor Jaworski?
With respect to the water main work that was pared down, like what are we foregoing? What's the negative of having pared it down from 4,000 to 1,000?
Great question through you, Mr. Mayor. When we looked at the water mains, we selected only the ones that were undersized to support the future configuration of Glen Walter. So anything that was undersized, I believe even to tie into the 3 subdivisions that are maybe from 2 years ago. So it wasn't looking at their condition, it was simply sizing to support the future system.
All right, so I think it's the will of council to go with option A, which is to get the prices, and then we can deliberate further from there. So moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-98 be received, that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry direct administration to option A, proceed with tendering the 2 tender packages being the Glen Walter Water Tower Tender Package and the associated Water Main Rehabilitation Tender Package. All those in favor? Carried. We'll now move to action request 7D, Community Sports and Recreation Infrastructure Fund, project options. Ms. Harbers, moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be resolved that staff report 2024-101 be received and that the administration that administration be directed to complete the necessary research and prepare a funding application for Stream 1 of the Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund for option A as presented in the staff report. Ms. Harbers?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So as you mentioned, this report is for the Ministry of Sport Infrastructure, or Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund. For the purpose of this evening, we are just speaking about Stream 1 of this funding opportunity. So after looking at the application, obviously we were made aware, I think it was late spring, that this funding was going to become available. However, the details of the funding weren't really released until August 19th when the application period. So as mentioned in the report, there's an option for Stream 1 to get 50% of your project costs covered. However, you may also apply for a special consideration to be able to have 70% of your project costs covered. They are funding between, the province is funding between 150,000 to 1 million. And the application deadline, as mentioned here, is October 29th. So it is a pretty short timeline, especially for the scale of projects that they are funding. But that's why we were bringing this forward tonight, to hopefully move forward either with something or to not, so that if we are to move forward, we can start getting that process going, especially with the application and also the supporting documents such as, Class D estimates and drawings if needed. Option A, as I've outlined here, is for basically the roof replacement project for here at the Charland Rec Center, as well as the tin and insulation on the perimeter of the building. Now, we do have some reports that support that the roof does need to be replaced at this facility, including a roof condition analysis in 2021 and a tech memo in 2022 whenever we were researching if we could put solar panels on top of the arena roof, which at the time it was determined that we cannot because of the structure. So replacing this roof would not allow solar panels because we would not be replacing the whole structure of how the building is built. It's just the roof portion. And then also the BCA building condition assessment that we just completed late last year and early this year identified the roof as well. So for option A, obviously we would need to do the research in order to determine the costs that this project would be. But I would suggest that it would be around that $1 million range, which would, be the full benefit of the funding that we'd be getting. Now, option B is for Tartan Hall washroom, kitchen, and bar area. Obviously, a smaller scale project, which I just wanted to provide these options as they've also been identified as items that could be done in this building as an upgrade and also to allow for more accessibility as part of our washroom setup. This would then, possibly be half the cost, which could then bring down the cost of our portion, depending on whether it's the 50% or the 30%. So basically, I'm just here this evening to kind of get a feel for what council wants to do so that we can either move forward or not move forward and have a decision made on which project, if we did move forward, what to apply for. We are in a tight timeline for this, so basically we have to work with what we have right now, the research that we have right now on what needs to get done. Obviously, we don't have a full concept plan of the arena of whether we are doing an expansion at some point or what those types of ideas or projects would look like. So at this point, we have to focus on what we are working with right now with the arena and what we know right now, because we don't really have all of the time in the world to look into those other options of either expansion or whatever that looks like. So basically, we're trying to look at projects that we could realistically apply for and within the scope of the funding. And then also I mean, obviously it is a bit tight to do even maybe the arena project, but we have spoken with our consultants, and we should be able to get something together in order to at least apply if we choose to do so. So I will leave it open for questions.
Okay, Councillor Bougie.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the presentation and information. To me, looking at the arena tonight, I feel like insulation and the roof would probably benefit the condensation issue at the arena and probably increase significantly the energy efficiency of it as well. So to me, option A would be my preferred choice, as it's a kind of need to have, whereas option B seems more of a nice to have. Yeah, it would be option A. And I mean, I don't know what the turnaround process would be. Maybe if we were approved, it would probably be done probably later at the end of the season, I would assume, if we were awarded the money.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, at this point, we're not sure when they are going to be announcing the successful applicants. However, although it says in the report, we have 2 years to complete the project, that is 2 years from when we sign an agreement for this funding, if we were to get it. So technically we would have 2 seasons to get through. And I mean, if we can finish an arena floor and dashboard project in the timeline of being closed in the off season, I would hope that we could probably do the same, or that's what we would hopefully aim for is in the off season, if that's what you were kind of getting at. Yeah.
Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Thank you very much, Sherilyn, for the presentation and also for your time for discussing it earlier today. As council knows, I would have very much liked to put solar panels on our roof because, anything to make this building more cost effective, because obviously it is expensive to run, but I do have to come to terms that it is not possible because it would require too much the building structure is, as it stands, not capable of supporting it. So I think in terms of what does need to happen, and it has been outlined in reports, and if you go out on the ice today, there's little mounds of ice mountains where the condensation collects. So it wouldn't be a bad thing. If anything that would help, reduce those issues within the arena, that would be a good thing. So I'd be leaning towards that option. However, I do want to put a plug in for budget, for trying to get, if we could put money for a concept plan for this arena, so that when these funding opportunities do come up, we have something a bit more detailed about maybe other things that we could be doing with this building. I know we've had some high-level stuff increasing the size of the building, but it's really this space, this side, it's the warm side, we call it, that needs work, and I'd be very interested to see if there's an option that if we move that way, obviously understand we'd have to do something around the septic, but if we move that way, that we might be able to reconfigure some of this side of the building that would meet a lot of the needs that are limitations right now in the building in terms of good usage of that kitchen when we have caterers, additional dressing rooms so that female hockey players can have dressing rooms as opposed to using the lunchroom. There's better accessibility. I know there's issues been raised recently about the washrooms downstairs and being able to access them if someone's in a motorized wheelchair. So lots of things. So I would like, for budget, if we could talk about having some money set aside for a concept plan for that, so that if indeed there's funding down the road for those other pieces, that we would have something at least to talk to. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Yes, we've been meeting for how many years now with the government, asking them to provide funding, and we have a potential for 70%, and we know that the roof needs to be done in the next few years anyway, so I'm all in favor.
All right, then it did say option A in the resolution. All those in favor of the motion is read. Carried. And thank you. We are now moving to the development agreement, proposed wedding venue, 20189 Beaupre Road by Ms. Haley. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-102 be received and that bylaw 2024-55 being a bylaw to enter into a development agreement with Caitlin Champagne Chalette and Jamie Lepine or Pine for the subject property legally described as part of Lot 4, Concession 8 in the geographic township of Charlottenburg, now in the township of South Glengarry, County of Glengarry, located at 20189 Beaupre Road, pin 671160128, and furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all applicable documents. Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you may recall on July 15th, a staff report was brought to council with a recommendation to approve zoning bylaw amendment 1323. The zoning bylaw amendment was approved by council, and it changed the zoning of the subject property located at 20189 Beaupre Road from rural to rural exception 20, and that will permit a proposed full-service and turnkey wedding and event venue with a minimum setback of 210 meters from the front property line, with options to also permit accessory accommodations on that property. During that meeting and within the staff report, there was a recommendation or there was a statement included in the staff report whereby I was recommending that a development agreement be entered into between the Township of South Glengarry and the property owners. A development agreement is not required in a case when we're doing a site-specific zoning amendment, but because there was recommendations that came out of the noise study that couldn't be included in the zoning bylaw amendment, it was suggested by myself that we would enter into this agreement. Basically, the purpose of the agreement is to include the recommendations of the noise study. A noise study was completed by a company by the name of State of the Art Acoustic Inc. It was commissioned by the property owner, and the township retained an engineering firm to complete a peer review. And the purpose of the peer review was just to make sure that they were following the proper procedures when preparing that noise study, and they were also looking at the aspects of the municipality and not necessarily only the developer. During the creation of the noise study, there was a few recommendations that came forward, and those recommendations are included in the noise study. I will just outline them fairly quickly for council, as I know they're in your attached package and in the agreement. First of all, the applicant proposed to locate the wedding venue a minimum of 210 meters on the north of the property line, so it would be north of where the existing dwelling and structures are. Because of this, the noise study used that location and then completed their modeling and review based on where it was proposed. You'll see in the conditions in the agreement that the first condition is that that structure actually be located at the 210 meter setback. And the reason for that is because with the study concentrating on that location, if they were to choose to build closer, then the study would have to be updated and amended. We also include the location of the proposed outdoor porch for the wedding venue, and the attachment is included in Schedule C. We also indicate that no fireworks or similar noise-generating activities will occur on the subject lands. We talk about where the proposed optimal location of the mechanical room would be, and that's included in Schedule C as well. We also talk about where activities with the place of assembly are conducted outdoors, and there should be a maximum of 2 loudspeakers. They talk about the location and the decibels of those speakers. We also talk about loudspeakers at any height in the green space. That's also included in Schedule B in the site plan. And we talk about loudspeakers where they're to be located inside the main hall of the wedding venue, and recommending, or I shouldn't say recommending, requiring that the hall doors and windows remain closed outside of daytime hours, and also that there are HVAC and air systems that are operating in the venue during the entire duration of all events. With a proposed building, this is an opportunity for the property owners to design the building to mitigate as much noise as possible, and so the noise study would have considered that. And this agreement will be registered on title, and the applicants have already signed the agreement to show their willingness that they're willing to move forward. I just want to speak to some members of the public inquiries. There's been some inquiries regarding the minimum distance separation calculation. This is a calculation that is from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food and Rural Affairs. I believe that ministry has a new name now, so I apologize I didn't reference that correctly. And so anytime we have construction proposed nearby a livestock facility or a biodigester, things like that, we do have to do the calculation. There seems to be some confusion based on the 210-meter setback of the location of the venue versus a required minimum distance separation from a livestock facility to the proposed venue. So I just want that to be very clear to council that this is specific to the noise study and the location of the structure. It does not include the minimum distance separation, nor does it need to. And that was been previously reviewed. So I'm happy to answer any questions from council if there's any, and thank you.
All right. If I recall properly, too, this was not a required thing. So the proponent of this venue did it. Like it's an additional thing that is just kind of trying to be neighborly too. So we should note that it was a thoughtful thing for you to approach, and then they received it very well. So that was being a good neighbor that way. Are there any other questions, Councilor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. No, I would like to thank staff and the proponent for working through this. I do think this is a necessary part of this process. Certainly, my concern with the zoning change was how noise would impact the abutting and near abutting properties. So I think that this work hopefully will mitigate those issues to a point that is everyone can move forward in harmony as best they can. So thanks again to staff for doing that. And just on that topic of the MDS, as my understanding is also that the 210, although it being different, it certainly doesn't contradict in the sense that it's actually longer. With the 210, they're still well meeting MDS requirements to nearby livestock facilities. Because you didn't quite say that, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion as read? Carried. Moving on to the Lancaster mural project agreements. Ms. Haley, it's moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-103 be received and bylaw 2024-56 being a bylaw to enter into an agreement between the Corporation of the Township of South Glengarry and Sally Fipers, and bylaw 2024-57 being a bylaw to enter into agreement between the Corporation of the Township of South Glengarry and Emma Kayla Restaurant Management Incorporated for the establishment of community murals be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council the 16th day of September 2024. Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council's aware that we've been quietly talking about our mural project, and the reason for that is because a funding application was applied for in March of 2024 by our Economic Development Officer, and that funding application was submitted to My Main Street Community Activator Grant. And up until very recently, we weren't permitted to publicly speak about the grant and where the money was coming from, and so we now have permission to reveal that. So on a positive note, we will be receiving money through the My Main Street program, which is an investment by the Government of Canada through FedDev Ontario. And they will be paying for 100% of the funding of the project as how we submitted the application. So it's pretty exciting that we're going to end up having 2 murals on Main Street in Lancaster. I've been working for the township for quite some time, and there's been some discussions off and on over many years about maybe having murals on our main street, so that's finally coming to fruition. This project is going to be led by Noella Cottenham. Noella is a resident in our community, quite well known as an accomplished sign maker. But she's also a member of an artist organization called the Wall Dogs, and they travel the world to create murals, and they've done some pretty neat projects. So I think it's impressive that we have a resident in our community that has this talent and experience and is now able to create 2 murals in South Glengarry. So we had, the funding announcement came to us much later than anticipated, which resulted in a really short period of time to pull the project together. In that short period of time, a committee was struck. We do have a couple members of council on that committee. Some of you may recall, or members of the public may recall, that we did a public campaign through social media for the public to vote on what type of media they want, or what type of mural they wanted to see. And the two top selections were an historic river scene and then an historic early farming scene. And that mural project will commence on Wednesday, September 25th, I believe it is, or no, Tuesday, I'm sorry, Wednesday. I should have my dates straight. And so it'll be an opportunity for members of the public, council, to come and watch the artists at work and see how it's happening and what they all have to go through. And the two locations will be 181 Military Road and 190 Military Road. It'll result in a mural facing north and a mural facing south. The mural for 190 Military Road is actually going to be created on the library property and mounted within an aluminum frame and then installed on the subject building, whereby the mural on 181 Military Road, it'll actually be directly onto the building wall. Because we have permission from these two property owners to paint and erect a mural on their properties, it means that we should be entering into an agreement with them. So we researched a few municipalities in Ontario to see what type of agreements they had, and drafted an agreement and had our solicitor, Paul Sturduk, to take a look at it to ensure that we're protecting the municipality. You'll see in the agreement that it primarily speaks to access, it speaks to maintenance, decommissioning. It also talks about basically that we don't pay any rent for it, that the property owners are graciously giving us their space. It is anticipated that a mural would last for up to 20 years. So it also talks about the ability if council wants to renew it, if it needs to be refreshed, you have a way to get out of the agreement if you want to, or to continue that agreement subject to property owners being willing. It'll also be registered on the property, so any future property owners who purchases these buildings, if these buildings go up for sale, are well aware of the mural agreement and what their requirements would be. So I believe it covers all of our risks and hopefully will result in a really fun project that'll happen in our community starting next week. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Bougie, resident of Lancaster.
Through Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Haley, for all your work, and Ms. Treverton. It was great to be part of the committee and work along with you all. Just the one note, the unveiling celebration is Saturday, September 28th from 3 to 6, and I believe there's already some signage up for that, and that goes along with the Apples and Art Tour as well, so we couldn't have timed it any better there. So thank you for everyone involved.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of the motion as read. Carried. Moving to revision, transfer of unopened road allowance bylaw. Ms. Campo, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-104 be received and that Bylaw 2024-58, being a bylaw to authorize the transfer of authorize the transfer ownership of an unopened road allowance to LT8 Lancaster Holdings Incorporated, be read a first, second, and third time passed, signed, and sealed in open council the 16th day of September 2024. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. This bylaw is essentially a housekeeping item related to a bylaw that council passed previously in 2023. I guess there's been a bit of a delay on registering the bylaw, and there's since been a change in ownership as well as the legal description. So the solicitor for the real estate transaction has asked us if we could provide an updated bylaw, and just given the amount of time and the multiple changes, it was not one that I could make a minor amendment to, so it's before you for approval this evening.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion as read? Carried. Moving to items for consideration. Support Resolution, Canada Community Building Fund. It was moved by Deputy Mayor Lang. Would somebody like to second it? Councillor Bougie, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry hereby supports the resolution passed by the City of Quinte West on August 14th, 2024, and calls on the federal government to provide a supplement to the allocation provided to municipalities under AMO Canada Community Building Fund agreement for 2024 to 2028 for the same amount that was allocated, effectively doubling the allocation for those years. And furthermore, that this resolution be forwarded to MFOA, AMO, MP Eric Duncan, the Federal Minister of Finance, and the City of Quinte West. I believe Deputy Mayor Lang brought this up. Did you want to further talk about it, or we can move it
Yeah,
right
we
now?
spoke about it last meeting, though, so I'm good.
I do enjoy, we get those municipal world things, and there's Mark Sutcliffe in the City of Ottawa asking for more money, and I think they get quite a bit more than we do, so respectfully to Mr. Sutcliffe and those bigger cities, I like that this one is more geared to us lower and rural tiers. So all those in favor of the motion as read, carried. I don't believe there was anything that was pulled from the consent agenda, and that's okay. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that the council accepts the items listed on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Carried. So we will be moving into closed session. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that the council convened closed session at 9:02 p.m. to discuss the following items under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act, SO 2001. 2. A meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if a subject matter being considered is C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land, specifically leased property, Staff Report 2024-105. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, specifically legal advice, Staff Reports 2024-106 and 2024-107. All those in favor? Carried. So we will now go into closed session. We will come back to the open session when we're done discussing matters. Okay, so we are live and back and coming out of closed session. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that council rise and reconvene at 10:23 into open session without reporting. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that council directs administration to carry out all actions as specified in the closed session minutes. All those in favor? Carried. Confirming bylaw, can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-59 being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council the 16th day of September 2024. All those in favor? Carried. And then adjournment. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of South Glengarry adjourn to the call of the chair at 10:24 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Have a good evening, and thank you to remaining staff and all those that were here before us.